Good morning and welcome to Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition right here on 92.9 KVRE and streaming online at kvre.com. My name is Mark Oliver. Tracy Simpson is on vacation this week, so I'll be flying solo with you for the next hour, and we have a lot to talk about. 2 championship series are in the books, a ton of NBA news, including a big coaching hire, and breaking down the first round of the NBA draft. We'll also recap the recent Arkansas Travelers Youth Foundation free baseball camp at Majestic Park this week, and the latest in National Park College Nighthawk athletics as well. As a reminder, you can text the show at any time, 501-915-1300. But without further ado, let's jump right in. We begin this week in Sunrise, Florida, where it took 7 games to get there, but the Florida Panthers finally have their first Stanley Cup Finals win. Yes, even if it meant blowing a 3-0 lead to start the series, third time's the charm, right? The third time that the Panthers have reached the championship stage. They defeat the Edmonton Oilers 2-1 in a thrilling Game 7 in front of their home crowd. Their defender Sergei Bobrovsky made 23 saves, really helped seal the deal for the team. And after losing to Vegas last year in 5 games, Florida avoids a historic collapse, comes back in Game 7 when it matters the most, and in the process, they avoid being the next 1942 Detroit Red Wings, who went up 3-0 in their Stanley Cup Final Series and lost the series in the final. But hey, you've got to tip your hat to the Edmonton Oilers, because this was one of the most exciting Stanley Cup Finals in recent memory. And this is a team that had its back against the wall from the get-go. And it's a team that gave it everything they had some historic moments in that comeback attempt, and really made this a series worth watching. In comparison to the NBA Finals between the Celtics and the Mavericks, this was leagues better, way more exciting, and higher viewership as well. But even more importantly, I think that this was a series that will have a long-lasting impact even after the season is over, because I think it's going to be huge in bringing new NHL fans to the game. Even fans that weren't interested in the sport or don't follow hockey were suddenly drawn into this series, tuned into this series, because they wanted to see if something rare could be achieved with Edmonton coming back and doing something that hasn't been done since 1942. So Edmonton falls short in the end, 2-1 in the final. But despite that, their star Connor McDavid is still named Finals MVP despite being a member of the losing team. And yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's awkward, right? But he absolutely earned that honor. He was the best player on the ice. We talked about that last week. Back-to-back 4-point games in the Stanley Cup Finals, something that had never been done before, and something that only Wayne Gretzky had ever done before in the Finals series. And that helped deliver the trophy as playoff MVP to Connor McDavid. The star forward became the 6th player to win that prestigious award without winning the Stanley Cup. And yeah, it made for kind of an awkward post-game interview, but he had nothing but great things to say. You can tell that he's going to be determined. He's going to use this loss as fuel to the fire to try to do something now that not only he and the Oilers, but the rest of the teams in Canada have struggled to do now for 30 consecutive years. That's right. The Canadian championship drought continues. 3 straight decades since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup. Pretty tough for a sport who many hold the popular opinion that is a Canadian sport. And now they'll have to wait 1 more year to see if they can bring the trophy back up north. Now, going back to Florida in this series, one of the things I think was most remarkable about this comeback and this Game 7 win was really the way that Florida never panicked. Okay, up 3-0 in the series, and then you lose Game 4, you lose Game 5 at home, you lose Game 6 in Edmonton. All of a sudden, there is no more advantage. There is no more lead, and there's no more confidence in this squad, because Edmonton comes back, steals all the momentum, and the one thing Florida doesn't do is panic. Now, the Stanley Cup finals and really any finals in any sport, it's a long process, okay? It's not a quick, easy tournament. And maybe not so much in game 4, but in games 5 and 6, when Edmonton really starts to show what it's capable of and starts turning the momentum of this series. The Panthers never really looked rattled at all. It's like they understood that, after last year, they lose in 5 games to Vegas. Reaching the cup was the mission that they set out to accomplish, and they got there, and they felt like no matter what it took, they had 7 games to get there. They were going to get there, and they were going to win that championship cup. Now, looking ahead to the offseason, Florida's been in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row. Can they make it a 3rd year in a row? Yeah, I think so, because most of their core is still locked in. They've got 11 pending unrestricted free agents. They're going to have to work to kind of lock those guys down in order to keep the core group together. But regardless of whether it took 7 games to get it done or 4 games to get it done, Florida proved that they have what it takes amongst a very competitive league. A very competitive field to get back-to-back stages, and it's only the 3rd team in NHL history to lose the NHL final the year prior and then come back and win it all the next season. This is a team of very special playmakers that obviously have a very strong bond, great team chemistry, and yeah, of course, Florida will be one of the favorites to reach this stage again next season. Mark my words, pending injuries, they will be right there in the mix. Now, I mentioned that there were 2 teams celebrating championships this week. That's right. They were not just celebrating in South Florida. They were also celebrating in Tennessee. Rocky Top at last. The Tennessee Volunteers are kings of the castle in the Men's College Baseball World Series. They secured the 2024 College World Series title this week over Texas A&M, the first national title in program history, defeating the Aggies 6-5 in a thrilling Game 3 to clinch the season's championship in Omaha, Nebraska. And much like what we saw in the Stanley Cup Finals, this one also came down to the very last game. The Volunteers bounced back from a Game 1 loss to win 2 straight and become the first number 1 national seed in the tournament to win the title since Miami did it in 1999. And the Volunteers got it done with the long ball. In that pivotal Game 3, Christian Moore hit a leadoff home run, and Dylan Dreiling went deep for the 3rd time in 3 games, and Tennessee survived some really tough moments, some really anxious moments late in that ball game to take the title. Dreiling named the Men's College World Series Most Outstanding Player, connected for his 23rd home run of the season. And an interesting stat for you out there, since the Men's College World Series Best of 3 finals began in 2003, Dreiling is the only player to homer in 3 games. Now, I mentioned the long ball, right? The Volunteers' 2 home runs on Monday moved them into a tie with the 1998 LSU Tigers for the most home runs in an NCAA tournament, 37. And that gave them 184 round trippers for the season. That's only 4 behind the 97 LSU team's record of 188. Volunteers got it done this season. Plain and simple, 60-13. On the year, and they held a really good Aggies offense that averaged 8.5 runs per game for the season to only 6 runs over the last 20 innings of the finals. It's spectacular defense. And now, at the end of the day, Tennessee joins the upper echelon of Southeast Conference baseball schools. They're now the 8th SEC school to win an NCAA national championship in baseball. Those 8 schools have combined for 16 total titles, and the SEC has now won 5 championships in a row, all by different schools in 10 of the past 15. So SEC dominance in baseball, yeah, it continues, and it continues in a big way. All right, sports fans, first quarter's in the books here on Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition. Remember, you can text the show at any time, 501-915-1300. When we come back, it's time to talk NBA and the future of the NBA. The first round of the NBA draft is in the books, and there are a lot of great steals and great deals I will break all of those down next when we come back on 92.9 KVRE. Welcome back to Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition right here on 92.9 KVRE, streaming online at kvre.com. I'm Mark Oliver. Second quarter of today's show is all about the NBA draft. For the second straight year, a Frenchman goes first in the draft as the Atlanta Hawks select Zachary Rizache with the first overall pick. Now, this is a draft class that many believe is a bit weaker compared to years past. NBA teams have opted for more international players in the first round rather than homegrown domestic players in the first round, specifically with 4 French players going in round number 1. This, of course, coming off of the heels of last year's league-changing grab of Victor Wembanyama by the San Antonio Spurs. And honestly, the success that we've seen from international-born players in the current era of the game. Now, Rizache becomes the 4th overall international prospect to be taken with NBA's top pick. Of course, Wembanyama last year, so it's 2 years in a row that the number 1 pick goes to an international player. Hey, just 19 years old, the 6'9" forward averaged 11.1 points per game and 4 rebounds per game in France's LNB Elite League last season. He's also the son of French professional basketball player Stéphane Rizache, who won an Olympic silver medal with the French national team in 2000. Rizache bolsters a front court for the Hawks that features forward Jalen Johnson and, of course, Trae Young, and hopes to fill some defensive gaps that the team has. It's no secret that last year the team finished near the bottom of the league in defensive efficiency, defense versus on-ball screens, transitions, and field goal percentage allowed, and they were painfully vulnerable, especially under the basket, allowing multiple layups and dunks. They look to shore that up. They believe that Rizache is the right guy. And the truth is we'll have to wait and see how he transitions into the NBA. You know, his size will certainly be a key factor to fill some of those holes for the Hawks. 6'9" is nothing to flinch at. And after getting the number 1 pick from the NBA lottery this past season, Atlanta went with what they thought was the best player on the board. We'll see how it pans out for him this year. Another Frenchman, 19-year-old Alex Sarr, was taken at number 2 by the Washington Wizards. Kentucky guard Reed Sheppard goes to the Rockets at 3. San Antonio picks up UConn point guard Stephon Castle at number 4. And the Detroit Pistons go with G League prospect Ron Holland II at the 5 spot. Rounding out the top 10 are Frenchman Tidjane Saloon to the Charlotte Hornets at 6. UConn center Donovan Clingan to the Portland Trailblazers at 7. Kentucky point guard Rob Dillingham to the Minnesota Timberwolves after a trade with the Spurs for the 8th spot. Purdue's Zach Edey at 9 to Memphis, and the Utah Jazz selecting Colorado shooting guard Cody Williams to round out the top 10. Okay, so let's talk about some of the biggest moments of the draft. And in my opinion, the biggest moment of the first round and the biggest win goes to the Memphis Grizzlies in the number 9 spot. They get an absolute steal in Zach Edey at the number 9. The 7'4" big man led Purdue to the NCAA championship game last season and appears to be one of the biggest and most productive players that the game has seen in a while. Listen, Memphis is a team that knew exactly what they wanted in this draft. They wanted a center. They wanted a big. And they went out and they got a good one in Zach Edey in a draft that also had some really good options at that position. And listen, while I'm sure they would have preferred to get Donovan Clingan ahead of Portland, I think that Edey can still be a very valuable piece to their puzzle. Now, there are some questions about his speed as it transitions to the NBA. Listen, at 299 pounds, how quickly can Edey get up and down the court in what is arguably a very fast offensive system led by John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.? You know what? Fine. It's a valid argument. However, this is undoubtedly the most dominant college basketball player over the past 2 seasons. He's won back-to-back John R. Wooden Awards. And I saw a lot of mock drafts having him go as low as 17 to the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm like, there's no way. This guy is absolutely a top 10 pick. And with the Grizzlies getting healthy coming into this next season, look for this team, the one that's right up the road, to return to prominence defense in the mighty Western Conference with this pick. I think the Grizzlies got an absolute steal getting Edey at number 9. Another big winner in the first round, and I'll admit it came as a big surprise to me, is the Los Angeles Lakers. Dalton Knecht is the next first-round pick to don the purple and gold for LA, and the All-American small forward from Tennessee slides into what I feel is a really good situation for him, despite sliding out of the top 10 of the draft. Averaging 21.7 points per game last season, including games of 40 and 37 points respectively against a good Kentucky and a good Purdue team. He was really consistent offensively, and his ability to draw fouls and get inside, down low, really helped Tennessee in some big moments last year. Now, Knecht is not going to give you a strong defensive presence down low. He's just simply not. He's not built that way. But the Lakers didn't actually need that. You got to remember, this is a team that has a core of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They don't need that big presence down low. What they need is another great shooting option for James and Davis to dish the ball to. And now, at least on paper, it appears that they have that. It's the first real move from new head coach J.J. Redick, who we'll talk about more in depth later in the show today. But it also appears to be a very big one. A lot of pressure on Redick to get the job done with his first-round pick. And you know, I think it couldn't have been a better situation for the Lakers. But regardless of that, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Listen, if Knecht is so good, why was he still available at the 17? You know, I thought about this. Truth be told, I think it simply comes down to this draft featuring a larger plethora of options at the center position. Bigs, more bigs than years past, and that has inspired some teams to make some out-of-the-box decisions when it came to addressing their needs, especially on defense. Knecht doesn't have that much of a defensive presence to him. However, it results in the perfect situation for LA. When a player like Dalton Knecht falls into your lap at the 17 spot, you run with him, and that's exactly what LA did. Another big winner in the first round, in my opinion, the Miami Heat. We talk about how did Knecht slide to the 17 for the Lakers. This is one of the reasons why. It's another team selecting a big man with their first round pick at the number 15 spot, and this one has ties to Arkansas. Indiana center and North Little Rock native Kel'el Ware picked up by the Heat at the 15 spot. Ware averaged 15.9 points, 9.9 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists, and 1.9 blocks per game for Indiana this past season after transferring from Oregon. He also connected on nearly 59% of his shots from the field, including a whopping 42.5 from beyond the arc. Now, Ware, on paper, he's a guard, but he's got big man athleticism. He's talented from beyond the arc, and he also has the size to protect the rim in a guard-laden offense. It's a move that simply makes sense for Miami. And of course, with Boston, the team to beat in the East, the Heat, who was just in the NBA Finals 2 years ago, knew that they had to make noise with this pick, and I think they have a very good one. All right, so now let's look at the other side of the coin. Some of the biggest questions and maybe even some of the biggest losers from the first round of the NBA draft. We begin with a team that had a top 5 pick and, in my opinion, missed the mark completely. The Detroit Pistons. Listen, you hear me talk about all my favorite teams on this show from time to time. A lot of the teams that I like, regardless of what sport they're in, typically end up not being super great teams. Like in baseball, for example, the White Sox are one of the worst teams in the MLB, still my favorite team. When it comes to the NFL, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and we have been struggling for years. On the NBA side, I like the Utah Jazz, and it's a team that has never won the NBA Finals. So for our listeners out there, for our fans that are fans of teams that are not very good, first of all, I salute your loyalty, and second of all, I understand completely. Look, nothing infuriates a fan base more than tanking a season to get a high draft pick and then watching as your team makes objectively a questionable decision involving said draft pick. Look, I'm not here to say that Ron Holland II is a bad player. But coming into the draft, where there were a lot of questions about his decision-making abilities on the court, combined with a significant hand injury where he ruptured a tendon in his right thumb and missed the final 19 games of the season, yeah, I've got questions about this pick at number 5. Before the draft, Holland was ranked as the 6th best small forward in the draft. And even though he was projected to be a first-round pick, This is absolutely a bold gamble by a Pistons organization who is in desperate need of success. High risk. I'm not so sure about the reward here. At best, this is a pick that can at least be a building block for you to continue moving pieces around. At worst, this is going to continue to keep this organization in the cellar, in the basement, right here in the mix, the same position next year. And while rebuilding an organization takes time and takes patience, yes, it'll also take people losing their job in order to make the right decisions going forward. Now, at the top of this segment, we'd mentioned how San Antonio's top pick of Victor Wembanyama last year will certainly be a game changer for the NBA. And it was very visible that the Spurs wanted to lay low for another year to continue to get pieces to build around him. Call it what you will, they tanked another year and got themselves into a position this year where they had 2 top 10 picks available to them in the draft. And honestly, this looked to be the moment where they grabbed 2 top prospects and take a giant leap toward returning to prominence in the Western Conference. At the number 4 spot, they grab a hard-nosed defender in UConn's Stephon Castle, a back-to-back NCAA champion who is often seen guarding opposing teams' best scorers over the past couple of seasons. And that can make him a very valuable asset in this generation of the NBA. Let's face it, at face value, I have absolutely no issue with this pick. However, what I didn't like is what happened next. At the 8th spot, the Spurs trade their pick away to the Minnesota Timberwolves for a 2031 unprotected first-round pick and a top 1 protected 2030 pick swap. And all of a sudden, San Antonio suddenly feels like they're still not ready to build a championship caliber team around one of the greatest prospects in NBA history. And I've got a problem with it. Now, on one side of the coin, you can say, Mark, listen, Minnesota threw the house at them. They gave the Spurs draft capital that may very well be important to maintaining the team's success down the road. What were you supposed to do in that situation? My response is this. 2 issues. Well, no, really 3 issues. 1, Minnesota is a very good basketball team right now. Probably the best that the Timberwolves organization has ever been. They just went to the Western Conference Finals, and San Antonio has now just handed them a key piece that is going to make them even better in Kentucky's Rob Dillingham. For the Spurs, when you decide to become a competitive team in the West again, and whenever that is, apparently, you will now need to contend with the monster that you just attached an extra limb to. Problem 2. Yes, you do get draft capital, but with what guarantee? We're talking about 2 picks that are 6 and 7 years away respectively and still doesn't really give off a positive impression to your fan base that you are trying to win now. You have Castle, yes. He pairs well with Victor, yes. But what does this mean for the next season and the seasons going forward? Does this indicate that the Spurs are headed for another lackluster season? By design, I assume, with the tank in order to secure another lottery pick next year? Perhaps. And that brings me to my 3rd problem, and that is Victor Wembanyama. Look, the guy is going to make a ton of money in this league, but he didn't come halfway across the world to just make money. He's being touted as one of the best players to lead this next generation of NBA stars. He's here to win. He wants to win. And listen, I get it. I've said it before. Winning takes time. Rebuilding takes time. But how long will Wembanyama be willing to sit and wait and be patient in order for San Antonio to be championship ready? And what happens when that moment comes and your star player is no longer happy? It's a teeter-totter balancing act for sure, and it's a big gamble for the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I mentioned the trade with Minnesota, and I'd also like to throw this in as another big round 1 win. Picking up Dillingham checks a lot of boxes for a team that really needed to make a public outward move for its fan base to show that A, it's not happy with the way that things ended last season, and B, it's committed to returning its team not only to the Western Conference Finals, but to the NBA Finals as well. This is an organization that has never won an NBA championship. By giving up these picks down the road, yes, it's more of a win more now kind of move, but it is the move that Minnesota needed to make. They jumped on top of the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs make the wrong decision, in my opinion, giving up that spot, But for Minnesota, it's the move they needed to make, not only to keep their players and their fan base happy, but also to put the organization in the best position to win now. Watch out, Minnesota will be a contender next season. All right, sports fans, second quarter in the books. We still have so much more to talk about here on Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition. When we come back, we'll break down the newest and certainly the biggest coaching hire in the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers, J.J. Redick. Don't go anywhere. Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition continues in a moment right here on 92.9 KVRE and streaming online at kvre.com. Welcome back to Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition right here on 92.9 KVRE and streaming online at kvre.com. My name is Mark Oliver, and as we move to the third quarter of today's show, our discussion remains with the NBA, where the biggest coaching vacancy in the league has finally been filled. Now, when the Los Angeles Lakers coaching job became available weeks ago, Tracy and I both said on this show that J.J. Redick would be the man selected for the job, and we were right. Redick, who joined the Lakers on his 40th birthday, had a lucrative playing career that spanned 15 years in the NBA, where he shot the 20th most three-pointers in NBA history, and of course on the college level had a great run with the Duke Blue Devils, was the National Player of the Year, multiple ACC Player of the Year honors for him, and most recently, after retirement from the NBA, Redick has been involved in more of the media side of the game, where co-hosted the Mind the Game podcast with Lakers star LeBron James, and called the NBA Finals for ESPN and ABC. More of an analytical approach. He has stayed with the game and has been locked in to the current generation and the current status quo, the current state of the NBA. Now, with that said, out of all the things I just mentioned, all the great things that J.J. Redick has done, you may have noticed that the one thing I didn't mention was any prior NBA coaching experience, and if you caught on to that, you're absolutely right. So why hire a coach for one of the most prestigious NBA organizations in the history of the game with no coaching experience? Well, despite never coaching in the NBA before, Redick did get a 4-year contract to the Lakers organization that faces intense pressure, not only to perform, but to win championships. It's very much akin to the New York Yankees of Major League Baseball. It's championship or bust. So why is J.J. Redick the best move and the right move for L.A. right now? We're going to take a moment and try to break down the larger picture. This hire really starts in Boston. The Celtics just won the NBA Finals, and they are going to hang their 18th banner in the Garden at the beginning of next season. It breaks the championship stalemate in the rivalry between Boston and LA and fuels the argument of Boston having the greatest NBA franchise of all time, at least when you consider what's in their trophy case. Now, while Boston thrives in the East, meanwhile, LA has had its share of struggles in the West. Yeah, they won championship number 17 during the COVID-19 bubble season, and yes, this is a team that has reached the Western Conference Finals as recently as 2 seasons ago, but it's also a team that features 2 great stars in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who, unfortunately, are also aging stars. The clock is ticking on their championship window involving these 2 superstars, and now the Lakers face a lot of pressure, perhaps indirectly, due to Boston's recent championship win. So let's look further at Boston. How did the Celtics do it? We look at Coach Joe Mazzulla, who at the age of 35 just became the youngest basketball coach to win the finals in NBA history. He's a very analytic-driven leader for the organization and really stepped up in an era where Boston was floundering with a lot of coaching changes and a lot of indecision in terms of leadership, and he finally found a way to get the team across the finish line. In an age where we're starting to see a changing of the guard in the NBA coaching spectrum, younger coaches are using mathematics and statistics to make their mark and to break into this industry. It's more of a continuation of the changed role of NBA coaches, where coaches aren't exactly the end-all, be-all, my way or the highway type of attitude anymore, but rather a supplementary role for the players. You may not like it, but that is where the game is at today. Okay, so how does J.J. Redick come into play here? Well, Let's look at the Dallas Mavericks, where the Jason Kidd-led Mavericks conquered the Western Conference against some really strong teams along the way this season. Player coaches are not new to the NBA. Steve Nash and, of course, Jason Kidd are both recent examples of great NBA players who ended up sitting in the coaching seat after their playing careers. Glaringly, however, is the lack of championships seen in recent years from coaches in those positions. Hey, Kidd got close to climbing that hurdle this season, but didn't get the job done in the NBA Finals, so that drought still exists. So now let's look at the Lakers. This is an organization that has seen some of its recent coaching hires find success in year number one, most notably advancing to the Western Conference Finals. But on the other side of the coin, it's an organization that struggles to keep a coach for longer than years. The bar for success is high, and it's essentially championship or bust. So why Redick? Well, up front, I do have to say it's very obvious that Redick was not the Lakers' first choice. It was University of Connecticut coach Dan Hurley, who just won back-to-back NCAA titles and reportedly turned down a $70 million payday to coach the Lakers and instead opted to go back to UConn to pursue a third consecutive title. Now, we can talk a whole other topic on the show, whether Hurley was actually entertaining the idea of going to LA. That's another story entirely. But for now, this is an organization that looks like it's settling for Redick, and it looks to be a pretty large discrepancy on paper in terms of capability. And JJ Redick was the first person to tell the media all of that, and he understands that the pressure is on him. Now, with all that said, here's why LA thinks that Redick is the right choice. They're looking at Boston. They're looking at Dallas. And while he doesn't have experience yet, Redick encapsulates qualities that both Boston and Dallas's head coaches currently offer. He's the best of both worlds, so to speak. He has great established rapport with LeBron James from the podcast, who is obviously the face of the franchise, and he helps bring a modernized, analytic-based approach to the organization, and that's what sets him apart from previous coaches and other candidates. He's played the game, specifically as a shooter, which will really help in assisting the development of Lakers players like Austin Reeves and newly drafted Dalton Knecht, who's basically this generation's JJ Redick. The similarities are pretty striking. He's also said that he plans to work with LeBron on expanding last season's career-best 41% shooting from beyond the arc and put Anthony Davis in more control of the offense. All good things, all right moves. And as a communications guy, Redick was ahead of the media in his introductory press conference. You know, just like, have you ever seen the movie 8 Mile with Eminem? Just like the final rap battle where Rabbit comes out and starts addressing all of his flaws, he takes away all of the that the opponents have to use against him. And much like that movie, Redick starts his press conference by addressing his inexperience, his flaws, his shortcomings, and then highlights why making an unorthodox coaching decision for the hire isn't necessarily a bad thing. The truth is, the Lakers have tried the traditional coaching mold. They've tried that approach, and it hasn't worked to reach its goals in the past few seasons, especially with having the greatest player in this era of the NBA currently sitting on the squad. GM Rob Pelinka knows the system is changing. He can see Boston, he can see Dallas, and he can see the other organizations out there that are slowly starting to make noise, especially in the West, with younger guys and less talented rosters. And he is taking a chance on embracing that change. Look at Monty Williams, for example, who took the Phoenix Suns all the way to the finals just a few years ago and is currently up for grabs, recently being dismissed by the Detroit Pistons. It's a coach with numerous years of NBA experience and arguably success at the NBA level, as long as you're not monitoring championships as your only metric for success. But at the end of the day, it's not Monty Williams in the coach's chair. It's JJ Redick as their guy. And listen, Redick knows it's a role that will understandably come with intense scrutiny from one of the most passionate fan bases in the NBA and a continued desire to win. With no coaching experience at all, he will be analyzed under the microscope, maybe even unfairly. But Redick does appear ready for the challenge. With the Lakers adding some very key pieces in this year's draft, and most importantly, getting healthy, can Los Angeles make another run to the top of the NBA world before the clock runs out on LeBron James. The clock starts ticking now. As a reminder, you can text the show at any time during the program, 501-915-1300. Let us know your thoughts on the Los Angeles Lakers hiring of new head coach J.J. Redick and the impact that we might see on the Western Conference with some of the new additions to the team. That's it. Third quarter in the books here on Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition. Much more to come on the program. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on 92.9 KVRE and online at kvre.com. Welcome back to Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition right here on 92.9 KVRE and streaming online at kvre.com. I'm Mark Oliver. For the fourth quarter of this week's show, let's take a look at some of the local stories impacting our KVRE listening area. And of course, it's the middle of summer. And for high school football athletes, it's known as the calm before the storm. It's dead week for a 2-week period. No practices, no talk about football, no nothing. Just rest and relaxation, time to get your mind right if you're a coaching staff or if you're a player, to enjoy your summer, enjoy your time off before it's time to get to work in preparation for the beginning of next season, which is right around the corner, I might add. We're roughly 2 months away from the opening kickoff of Friday Night Lights and the beginning of year number 15 on the microphone for Fountain Lake football for both Tracy Simpson and myself. And there is a lot to be excited about across all the teams in the KVRE listening area. Stay tuned to future episodes of Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition, where we take it right from the horse's mouth, interviewing the head coaches of your favorite high school football teams and getting the first look at this year's teams. For our next topic, we head to the baseball diamond, where earlier this week, the Arkansas Travelers Youth Foundation put on a free baseball and softball skills clinic for youngsters aged 6 to 14 at Majestic Park in Hot Springs. I had the opportunity to attend the camp with 2 of my children, and let me tell you something, this was a well put together clinic, well thought out, featuring some of the brightest stars of the Arkansas Travelers organization, and ultimately a really good introduction for youngsters to the game of baseball and softball. It was a hot one on Monday morning. I think the heat index was pushing around 107 degrees, not too far after 9 o'clock in the morning. But hats off to Executive Director Lance Restum of the Arkansas Travelers Youth Foundation for putting on a great clinic. More than 100 kids were in attendance, boys and girls, learning hitting, fielding, base running, and even working to develop their baseball IQ. They had a mock infield set up in the outfield where they would put campers on the bases and teach them what to do in specific baseball situations, and having a lot of fun in the process. And of course, after the camp, the Arkansas Travelers players stayed and signed autographs and posters and balls, and participants even got tickets to Travs games. And I'm sure that we have some listeners out there who had kids or grandkids or friends that attended the camp. I know firsthand, I had a couple of youngsters that were really kind of starstruck getting to meet some of the future Seattle Mariners out there. Both Ben and River had a good chance to sit down with Arkansas Travelers star Harry Ford and learn about what he does. And all the way on the trip home, they're like, "Dad, we just met a millionaire." And it was one of those moments that was truly special from a dad's perspective. Of course, with the camp happening on a Monday, it's usually the day off for the Arkansas Travelers. So, they make the drive from North Little Rock to Hot Springs. They volunteer their time giving back to the youth and the future of baseball and maybe even future Arkansas Travelers. But it really went above and beyond just a 2-hour task for them. I mentioned Harry Ford. He and his Travelers teammates that came and helped out at the camp stayed almost 2 hours after the camp ended, as everybody was packing everything up, ready to head back to North Little Rock. The players noticed some local area Hot Springs kids just playing on Jackie Robinson Field and decided to join them for a game of pickup baseball. And to those youngsters out there, I'm sure that meant everything. Got to remember, this was their day off. These guys could have been playing golf at the country club, but they chose to stay after their job was done and just interact and be with local youth on their day off. That's not just a great role model or a great leader. That's a true professional and a true all-star. Once again, thank you to the Arkansas Travelers Youth Foundation for putting on the free skills and drills camp at Majestic Park. And of course, thank you to Majestic Park for continuing to be a hub to continue growing the love of baseball and softball right here in Central Arkansas. Everyone had a great time, and we can't wait for the next time that we get to Dickey-Stephens Park to catch the greatest show on dirt once again. To learn more about the Arkansas Travelers Youth Foundation, you can find them on Facebook or go to milb.com/Arkansas. And as a thank you to the Arkansas Travelers, we would like to send one lucky family to go see the Travelers play at Dickey-Stephens Park. You can text us right now on the KVRE text line, 501-915-1300. Say, I want to see the Travs, and we have 4 tickets for you to go see the Travs at Dickey-Stephens Park. Speaking of summer camps, National Park College is hosting boys and girls soccer camps this summer for junior high and high school age student athletes. The Nighthawk Boys High School Camp will take place July 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Hot Springs World Class High School. The High School Girls Camp will take place the following day, July 9th at Hot Springs World Class High School, also from 10 to 4. And a combined boys and girls junior high camp will be held July 10th from 9 a.m. till 12 o'clock. Each camp will be held at Hot Springs World Class High School, and registration is $75 for camp participants. Campers will work through all sorts of drills, developing basic soccer skills such as passing, dribbling, defending, and shooting, and team up with current Nighthawk men and women's soccer players to not only learn and grow the game, but learn what it takes to be a Nighthawk. Each day will end with small-sided play, ranging from 3 versus 3 to 7v7. Campers can expect to learn new and exciting skills, drills, and perspectives related to the game from NPC's talented and diverse counselors. To register for any of the National Park College summer soccer camps, you can visit them online at np.edu/summercamps. Our final topic also involves basketball, not on the NBA level, but on the local level. You see, just 3 months removed from winning the NJCAA Division II Men's Basketball National Championship, National Park College head coach Dylan Hargrove is moving on to the next level. This week, it was announced that Hargrove would become the newest head coach of McCook Community College, an NJCAA Division I men's basketball program located in South Central Nebraska. Hargrove says farewell to National Park College after 6 total seasons, including 4 as head coach of the Nighthawks, where he amassed an impressive 82-27 record, winning 75% of his games as head coach. By now, it's no secret that Hargrove and the Nighthawks rewrote the history books in Hot Springs last season, finishing 31-1, including winning the first 27 games of the season and spending 7 weeks ranked number 1 in the country. The team's lone blemish on the season came in the NJCAA Region II Championship game, where the Nighthawks fell to El Dorado's South Arkansas College. Despite the loss, National Park College received one of 4 at-large invitations to the national tournament offered by the NJCAA and bounced back as the tournament's number 5 seed, where it defeated Johnson County Community College, North Central Missouri College, top-seeded Davidson-Davie Community College, and in the finals, Illinois' South Suburban College. The accolades continued after the final buzzer sounded. Hargrove was named coach of the tournament and also picked up multiple postseason honors, including National Association of Basketball Coaches 2-Year Coach of the Year and the NJCAA Division II Men's Basketball Coach of the Year. In April, Hargrove and the Nighthawks were recognized at the state level by the Arkansas Senate and House of Representatives. And in May, Hargrove coached Nighthawks sophomore Nakavion White in the NJCAA All-Star Game in Las Vegas, Nevada. And while the news may be tough for some to hear, the move to Nebraska does bring Hargrove's career full circle. The national championship winning coach got his collegiate start at Little Priest Tribal College in Winnebago, Nebraska during the 2017-18 season, the first year that National Park College Nighthawk basketball began as a club team, and now turns his attention to bringing a national championship to the Indians of McCook Community College. Now, listen, I get it. Losing a coach of Hargrove's caliber, one might think that this spells doom and gloom for National Park College, who not only faces the tough test of replacing most of its roster, who graduated in May and has now moved on to 4-year colleges and universities at the next level this summer, but also must now fill a coaching vacancy in order to defend its title. But what if I told you that that may not necessarily be the case? Just days after Hargrove's departure at NPC, Nighthawk Nation has already locked in its next head men's basketball coach, and his name is Hargrove 2. Coach Dylan Hargrove's father, Coach Dion Hargrove, was announced as NPC's third men's basketball coach in program history Friday, and it's a bittersweet changing of the guard that actually makes a lot of sense. While the younger Hargrove takes his talents to Division I junior college, the senior Hargrove brings with him a polished coaching resume filled with 34 seasons of accomplishments at the high school level, including 3 state championships across boys and girls basketball and even high school baseball. Like son, like father, Dion Hargrove is also a winner on the basketball court, winning just shy of 70% of his career games with a 771-342 record, and has led 10 different programs to 14 state tournament appearances, 5 regional championships, 12 district championships, and 9 conference titles. His list of on-the-court accomplishments continues with 9 All-Star Coach nominations, 14 Conference Coach of the Year honors, and a 2-time finalist for Missouri State High School Coach of the Year. On a personal level, I've gotten to see Coach Dion Hargrove in action, and I've gotten to know him in recent years, most recently when I traveled with the team to Danville, Illinois in March during the national tournament. I got to see firsthand the level of research and analytics that both father and son Hargrove put into their craft. It's pretty incredible. And as someone who has been around Nighthawk men's basketball since day one of the program, this hire not only excites me, but gives me full confidence that NPC is not looking at a rebuild in the season ahead, but rather a reload. Taking a look at the clock, we're in the 2-minute warning of the 4th quarter of this week's show, and I don't even feel like we've scratched the surface of all there is to talk about going on in the sporting world this week. We talked a lot of basketball on today's program, and we didn't even get to one of the biggest stories in the basketball world, and that was the drafting of Bronny James, LeBron James' son, to play alongside him on the Los Angeles Lakers. Next week, when Tracy returns from vacation, we'll absolutely have to break down that historic father-son moment and what it might mean for the organization and the league going forward. As always, you can text the show at any time during the week. If you know of a student athlete or a sports official going the extra mile in your community, or if you have a sports story that you would like for Tracy and I to talk about, you can text the KVRE text line at 501-915-1300. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Sports and Shorts Tailgate Edition, every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on your hometown radio station, 92.9 KVRE, and streaming online at kvre.com. Past episodes of the show are also available anywhere you get podcasts. I'm Mark Oliver. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.